Who profits from student loans? Student loan profiteers' motivation: become a financial colossus, too big to fail. So the profiteers grow alongside the borrowers. Contractors, such as servicers who have historically little oversight from the federal government, profit. They have a perverse incentive to make a profit from collecting as much as they can from student debtors. Debt collectors, who contract with federal and private lenders, profit. Private lenders profit on private loans from rising tuition, as well as any FFELP loans they made and continue to own, pre-2010 federal student loans. Ownership is a serious issue for pre-2010 federal student loans because a student loan may be originated by one institution but owned by another institution and then guaranteed by yet another. It can also be serviced by other agencies. The powerful student loan industry closed off the bankruptcy option for private student loans in 2005. Investors, Wall Street, who lend the federal government money to issue U.S. treasuries, profit on student loans. The federal government must pay interest on the U.S. treasuries to those investors. The investors use the government to treat borrowers with powerful collection tactics and to maintain removal of U.S. constitutional protections. Corporations are concerned with profits and not diplomas. They sell loans that students pay for with their retirement budget and then collect fees from the government to hound those students when they default. They have made it normal and patriotic to not care whether the borrower can afford the loan by removing bankruptcy protections. Who profits from student loans? The federal government, who profits from rising tuition. The federal government is in business for itself and not for the benefit of those who borrow or do not borrow. If the federal government is not profiting from student loans that have no bankruptcy protection and no statute of limitations, while enjoying unpoliced garnishment rights, something is seriously wrong. Though borrowers must pay their retirement budget to the federal government even after they retire, the federal government appears to ultimately yield a net cost after the program costs are re-estimated. The department reports that most of the interest collected pays for making, servicing, and collecting on the loans, as well as for defaults, discharges, and loan forgiveness. The profit arises from the government's ability to borrow money at a low rate and then lend it to students at a higher rate, thus charging students more than is necessary to recoup its costs. Who profits from student loans? The schools profit from rising tuition so much that they have to manufacture ways to account for higher tuition, which only help the schools. States are doing their part to stop feeding the cycle of rising tuition by funding schools less. But there is a hole in the boat because loans fuel tuition increases by creating someone else to pay: private investors and private funding sources. Why does school tuition keep rising despite protests and marches for decades? Increased demand for a college education, less funding, taxpayer dollars, from state governments to schools who compete in a tuition game for top, rich, or famous students or athletes. Student borrowing replaced the state's funding, which alters lives, relationships, and retirement. The United States government turns young people who are trying to get an education into profit centers to bring in more revenue for the federal government. Administrative and operating costs, amenities and accommodations keep rising. Colleges compete through amenities and the students you rub elbows with. Inflation. Professors want to see pay go up as the cost of living increases. However, though inflation stopped rising, tuition increases did not. Inflation has always been outpaced. Available financial aid for students continues to increase. People can keep paying. Colleges spend more on administrative services with no evidence of obvious benefits, like higher graduation rates and higher salaries. Schools calm ruffled feathers. Over the last 20 years alone, since 2004, the cost of education at public four-year institutions has increased by a staggering 179.2% for the average student. Schools calm ruffled feathers to create social and financial pressure, which drives up demand, which drives up tuition that is justified by extra amenities added. A vicious cycle. So far, this cycle of social pressure and demand is unbreakable. Colleges make it seem safe to borrow by assuring borrowers that everyone borrows. Marketing the loans and loan management financial products includes legal advice to build trust. The profiteers contractors provide information to students on the types and terms of loans available. Contractors and the government are supposed to help guide borrowers through the new and the alternative government financial products. No negotiation. Profiteers offer new financial products, consolidation, income related, long run forgiveness, etc., instead of allowing the right to negotiate, which would teach us what else might work to manage the lifelong debt better. Instead, they demand a sure thing, a myth. Those who profit have absolute power over borrowers.